We'll call the meeting to order. Now that we've hit quorum, nice to see everybody. So as you heard, the meeting is being recorded. Just a reminder of that. And also, if we could turn on the live transcript function, is that on already, Jamie? Well, the live transcript function should be on, and you can toggle it on and off as you need in the toolbar, which is typically at the bottom of the Zoom app window. So now that we've called the meeting to order, we'll move on to roll call. So today, when you hear your name, just give us, your position, your pronouns, and something you're grateful for. I know it's not November, but I feel as if coming out of the winter months, it'd be good to share something we're all grateful for. And so let's get started. Iman Novin. Okay. Margaret Schultz.
Hi, I hold the behavioral health chair and my pronouns are her. And I am grateful for the sunny weather recently. It's been nice. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, the weather has been improving for sure. Terry House.
Thinks she's on vacation.
Okay. Leslie Gleason. Okay. Kiva Dean.
Hi, I hold the community representative seat tentatively, and I am grateful simply to be here. A whole lot of people didn't make it to today, and so I'm here today.
Thank you, Kiva, and it's great to have you here today.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Bruno.
Hi, everyone. Joe Bruno here. I am the consumer seat as well as vice chair, and I am super grateful to Juno for being here. It's just, I'm so excited for this. So excited.
Thank you so much, Joe. I feel your excitement and energy. I appreciate it. Alejandra Chamberlain. Okay, Gabriel Lemus.
Hello, everyone. Excuse me. Gabriel Lemus. I hold the Emergency Solutions Grant Program seat. Pronouns he, him, his. I'm grateful that it's almost the end of the week.
Me too. Definitely need the weekend. Angela Bullock-Hayes.
Hi, I'm Angela Bullock-Hayes. I hold the seat for Contra Costa County Employment and Human Services. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm grateful to be in the month of February and moving into the spring.
Thank you, Angela. Wayne Earl.
Hello, everyone. My name is Wayne Earl. I am the Faith Community Representative, and I am grateful for the completion of a number of projects that we've been working on for some time now. I'm just grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Lene Altman. Deanne Pern. Apologies.
That's all right. Every substitute teacher I ever had called me Dean Pern.
Oh.
And I'd always say, nope, he can't be here today. I'm Deanne Perrin. I am with Hope Solutions, she, her pronouns. And I am really grateful to be doing this work with all of you. There's a lot of sad stuff happening, but I always feel buoyed and happy and grateful and knowing that we're making a difference. And if I'm having a bad day, you're having a good day, and we're all together moving the needle.
Thank you, Deanne. It feels good to be moving it together as a team. Tony Yusufari.
Hi, everybody. Tony Yusufari with the Housing Authority, Contra Costa County, he, him, his. I am grateful for all our new people on our board and the new blood being infused, and wish Juno and Joe all the best and be in their leadership roles. And we're here to support you.
Thank you, Tony. Sean Ray,
Everybody, Sean Ray, Lieutenant, St. Paul Police Department, he, him, his, and I am thankful it is my Friday.
I wish I was there with you on that Friday. Sean Ray, Manjeet.
That was Sean.
Oh, what was that, Jamie?
Sorry, I was saying that was Sean that just reported out.
Oh, perfect. Oh, apologies. Manjeet Sapal,
He won't make it today.
Pat Mims, Masaki Hirayama,
She also won't be here today. She's still been redeployed to a new position, but she should be back in April.
And I just want to notify that Pat Mims is there. He was just trying to talk. I saw him talking, but we can't hear him.
And Leslie is here too.
Okay, perfect. Leslie put their introduction in the chat. And Pat, are you having trouble on your microphone? If you want to put your introduction in the chat while you fix it, we can make sure that we know you're here.
And Iman is here too now in the chat.
Perfect. Okay, Maureen Nelson. And myself, Juno Hedrick, and I'm here. Okay, well, perfect. So anybody else who's just tuning in via phone or can't unmute, feel free to drop your introductions in the chat, as a lot of you already have, and thank you. So if everything's all set, we'll move on to our next item, which is public comment. And so just to specify, this is public comment for any agenda-related items. For comments not related to the agenda, we're just going to wait until the community announcement section at the end of the agenda. So feel free to unmute then if you have any non-agenda related items. So open period for members now of the public to comment on items on the agenda. And you can drop them in comments into the chat too.
Juno, I'm not seeing anything so far. No hands raised as far as I can see.
Okay.
And Alejandra is here as well now.
Oh, perfect. Good, we're filling up here. Okay, well then if there are no comments to be put in the chat or no hands raised, then we can move on to the minutes, the next item. So we're going to be moving on to the minutes. It's an action item, so I will be open to taking a motion to approve the minutes from January 20th, 2021, which was our last meeting, which was a bonus meeting. And if anybody would like to make that motion, I'm open to it now.
I'll move we approve the minutes.
This is Joe. I'll second.
Thank you. So with the approval of the minutes, in the second, we can do a roll call vote to approve the minutes from January 20th, 2021. Iman Novin. Sorry, 2022. Thank you for clarification, Jamie.
Council members, if your audio is not working, you can put your vote in the chat.
Should I continue?
Yeah, continue with roll call vote, and we'll monitor the chat as staff.
Okay, thank you. Margaret Schultz.
Aye.
Terry House. Leslie Gleason.
Aye.
Kiva Dean.
Aye.
Joe Bruno.
Aye.
Alejandra Chamberlain.
Aye.
Gabriel Lemus.
Aye.
Angela Bullock Hayes.
Aye.
Wayne Earl.
Aye.
Lene Altman.
Aye.
Deanne Pern,
Aye.
Tony Usaferi,
I was absent a lot of that meeting. I'll abstain.
okay, Sean Ray.
Aye.
Manjit Sapal. Pat Mims, who is in the chat, I believe. Masaki Hirayama. Maureen Nelson. And myself, which is an I.
And I see that Maureen's here, but I don't know if she can. Maureen, if you can't get your audio working, you can vote in the chat on the minute.
And yeah, we'll make sure to see that vote. So I believe that motion passes, Jamie, correct?
You are correct.
All
You're
right,
doing great. And I from Maureen.
perfect. So yeah, that motion passes. So we're going to move to committee report outs. So apologies. So today we're going to be hearing from myself first in the committee report outs representing the Youth Action Council. And so I'll put on my YAC hat for a moment. So YAC, our last report out was quite positive. And this report out is not the opposite, but it is a little bit sad. There was an individual in program, a youth who passed away between our previous meeting and this meeting. And so YAC's attention is kind of focused on that currently primarily. YAC, in the past, YAC has set up candlelit vigils for clients who have passed away while they were in program. And so we're focusing on working with the family and working alongside staff to make that happen. And that's going to be our primary focus probably for the majority of this month. I know a little bit of a sad update, and we're not going to stop also thinking about expanding our connections to the community. However, we're going to have to take a bit of a pause to focus on what has happened. And so that's it for my committee report out for YAC this week. And look for some more positive stuff next week. Perfect. So next we have Jamie Klinger, who will be giving us an update on the Point in Time Count Committee. Jamie, if you wouldn't mind unmuting and take it away.
Thank you, Juno. I'm just here to remind folks that our sheltered and unsheltered point in time, also known as the PIT count, is 3 weeks away. So we are rapidly approaching that time frame. There is still actually opportunity to volunteer. So I'm going to drop the registration link within the chat here in just 2 minutes, right after my report out. We are still in need of about 50 volunteers that would make up about 25 teams. So all of the high density areas essentially are covered with our core outreach staff, and our homeless service provider network and law enforcement agencies have really stood up to the plate. So we are very thankful for all of the current registration and active interest and participation, but we're still leaning on the community. So now is a really important time to step up to this challenge. We are, again, asking people to sign up in pairs of 2 because we do not want to, assign people together who might not be in the same social pod or within the same kind of staff or amongst your colleagues, just to reduce any potential COVID-19 exposure. So there is the link that you can see here on the slides. I will also, again, as mentioned, post it on the chat. And I would say we're going to do a really strong push over the next week to get those final volunteers. And just as a reminder, the date of the unsheltered count is February 24th. We are asking people to canvass between 5 and 10 a.m. For folks who have already registered, I've been getting a handful of questions about future communications and trainings and things like that. So we have you on our radar. There isn't a confirmation email, unfortunately, once you sign up. So if you signed up, you did your due diligence, and that's all you need to do for now. We will be reaching out with the training materials and more information about what to expect in, I believe, the end of next week. So you should get some more information there. Again, if you're not receiving that information by the end of next week, feel free to reach out to myself, Jamie Jeanette, or the COC general inbox, and just give us a ping. We'd be happy to circle back. And we will also be reaching out to agencies directly. So if we don't have a ton of staff from your agency and you're a typical participant and volunteer, we're going to find you. It's really important that we have really strong participation so that we have full coverage of the community and a high success rate. The count did not happen last year because of the pit. So that's my ask and my sales pitch for this year. Any questions?
Jamie, there's a few questions in the chat sort of about how we're doing outreach. So have we reached out to Rotary? How are we doing outreach for more volunteers?
We've been tapping into our current COC network. So I would say the majority of the outreach has been through our COC newsletters so far. We have also reached out to executive directors directly and asked folks to send to the registration link to their staff, as well as anybody in their provider network. If folks have other ideas that I am not touching on, we are more than interested in your broader networks as well. So if there's something I didn't mention and there's opportunities, reach out to me or Jamie Jeanette directly, and then we'd be happy to discuss and lean on you. I see Joe has a hand up too.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if you're thinking of possibly using the people who are currently unhoused using the shelter as volunteers to do this work, to do pit count.
We are, and we have asked those folks to pair with potential either staff at the shelter or core outreach teams. So that identification process is currently in the works. However, we also like to lean on people with lived experience and specifically folks in shelters to help us with our survey sampling right after the pit count. That's where we collect all of the demographic information and get more detailed data on their experiences. So we try to be really mindful about the multiple asks and how tasking that is. So we will also be in communication with all shelter providers in the upcoming weeks to identify kind of primary leads or representatives that may be able to recruit folks for that activity as well. Great question, Joe. Jamie, any other questions I missed?
I don't think so. Just to mention, you all can be ambassadors. So if you have networks, you have the link. And if you, I'm going to put my email in the chat again. Feel free to reach out to me if you have questions or places where you think we should reach out. I know it's been a little different in years past. We've started the recruitment a lot earlier. COVID has made things different in a lot of different aspects this year. So we were primarily focusing on providers at first. So the community outreach is happening later than it normally would. It's not your imagination. But we are now finally in that phase. So by all means, give us your thoughts and ideas, and we will try and make that happen.
And we just really appreciate everyone's support and participation. It means a lot to us. This is a heavy lift, but a really important event for our community. And I see one more question. Does the count include cities or just the unincorporated area? We actually aim to cover every single census tract, all 240 plus of those census tracts across the entire community. So that's why volunteer participation is so important. We need lots of people available to cover every inch of the community.
Well, if there are no more questions, then we can move on.
I have one last question, sorry.
Oh,
When does the pit count start on the 24th?
We're asking folks to begin as early as 5 a.m. I know that's very, very early, but it's really important, especially in the high density areas where people experience unsheltered homelessness, to identify where people are sleeping before they're leaving services or starting to move around to access services. So we're aiming for a time frame of 5 to 10. There will be instructions too about how to sign in and confirm that you've been deployed, and all teams are going to self-deploy. So there's not going to be a kickoff site or kind of the normal rah-rah that we really appreciate doing every year because of limiting, congregating together. But yes, it's the one morning that we make a very early ask. I also see a question from Lene. Sure thing, Margaret.
Yeah, sorry, really quickly. I know it's early, 5 a.m. Oh, never mind. I see now. Okay, and we can just send the link out to anyone and then they can just fill that out. You don't care. Okay, wonderful. Thanks.
Yep, and at this point, it really is broad outreach. So community folks, we don't necessarily need you to have experience working with the homeless population or, be really familiar with known, hotspots or anything like that. Most of those, kind of primary areas are already covered and identified and have team representatives. So now we're just making sure every single other census tract has a team representing that area. So the more the merrier. You can bring your mom, your brother, your sister, your partner, whatever that looks like. We just need that support. All right, I'll hand it back to you, Juno. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie, and also thank you, everybody on the point in time count committee. Everybody who worked hard to put that together.
Deanne looks like she has her hand up.
Oh, Deanne.
Sorry, one other quick clarifying question. Is there an age limit for the volunteers? Like, can 16, 17-year-olds help?
So long as they're not the driver. Jamie, do you have a question about that? We usually recruit 18 and older, but if your partner is a
It's a little different this year. It's a good question. That's a good question, Deanne. We'll do a little research. So usually when I don't know what ASR's policy is. Usually when it's us, we have them sign a volunteer release form. So I don't know how ASR is doing that. So
we will circle back on that question and send communication out broadly.
And perhaps there's an exception if it's a parent-child too.
That makes sense. More to come, Deanne. Great question.
Excuse me.
All great questions. Thank you, everybody. If there's no more questions, we'll move on to the next item, which is old business. So our first item, let me just make sure we're on the correct slide. Perfect. Our first item is going to be introduced by Jamie Jeanette, who's going to talk a little bit about the equity report. So
thank you, Jim. Awesome. Next slide, please. And next slide again. So our much awaited equity assessment of our system of care is finally available, and that was included in the packet. I'm not going to spend a lot of time digging in the details because we're going to talk more about some next steps, but I just wanted to frame sort of what work we've done that's led up to it. So some of you might be thinking, like, we've heard this a million times, but I think the context is important. So we are looking at how to assess and address equity challenges in our system of care. And we've been working on this, plugging away in a couple different ways. So one way is that we actually now, probably a year ago, signed up to be part of something called a Racial Equity Action Lab that was through an organization called BARHI, Bay Area Regional Health and Equities Initiative. That included people from our COC, but also people outside of our COC, but that were really interested in homelessness and around equity issues in addressing homelessness. We had a cohort that came together. We worked on the project for about 6 months, and the net result of that I'll get to in a minute, but we were one of multiple cohorts that participated. So lots of other Bay Area communities participated, and we just had a little reunion. And BARHI produced a report that kind of summarized the whole cohort process and then what each community came up with as their project. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that what we came up with in our cohort was, and this is a lot of words, but what I want to highlight is that the group decided that the priority should be to develop a strategic plan really focused on amplifying the voice of people with lived experience. So we're using the term consumer, that may change, But basically so that the COC can better meet the needs of people in our system of care and build communication channels and relationships that are really tailored to meeting people's needs. So that work was happening, and we came up with this idea for what we wanted to work on. And then right about the time that that cohort was ending and you would naturally have started launching that work, we engaged some technical assistance. So if you go to the next slide, we engaged some technical assistance in the form of an agency called C4 Innovations. And they were hired to do a few things. So one was they did a great series of trainings. We did a series of 4 trainings to really like lay the groundwork for our community around equity. What does that mean? What's some of the language that we use? How can we think about this? How can we think about this in terms of a homeless system of care? And I know the links to those trainings are actually being wonky right now, so I'm getting that fixed on the technical end. They also were contracted to do an assessment of equity in our whole system of care. And we most recently they did a report out, just like a verbal report out with some slides of sort of the key findings. And so that link, and we can drop it in the chat, is a link to the recording of that report out on the slides. They also developed, oops, go back one more. So they also developed a document about how to, and this ties in with the real cohort, how to build authentic relationships with people with a lived experience of homelessness. And we finally, literally at 4:59 on Friday, got the actual equity report. So if you go to the next slide, and I, like many of you, have not had a time to do like a super deep dig and read through the equity report. And that's okay, because part of what we're going to figure out today is who's going to be the group to do a deep dive and work on next steps. But in the report and in their report out, they came up with 9 key recommendations. And so I wanted to present this to you. And then we're going to just spend a little bit of time right now just getting your sort of gut check. So some of you maybe the A students that have already like read the report and made notes and have lots of deep thoughts on it. And some of you, this may be the first time you're hearing it. That's fine. But I wanted to do just a quick recap of some of the key recommendations, and then want to just do like a temp check with people. And I want to be super clear. So I know that people process information really differently. So for some people, like I'm a think on the fly, I'm a talk out loud. I have other people close to my life or that I work with that really need time to like sit and read something and process it, and they can't give you feedback until they've done that. So today is going to work for that first group, but we're going to have more opportunities to do some deeper thinking and processing of this as well. So don't freak out if you're feeling like, I don't know, I haven't read it. That's okay. So the main recommendations, first one is to build capacity and infrastructure to ensure the sustainability of racial equity work. Basically, don't make it be just like this one-time cute little project and like, check, we've done equity. Develop a plan for integrating partners with lived experience into decision-making processes. This is a theme that is coming up in a lot of places. Engage in community-led processes. Develop a more equitable assessment and prioritization process. And that's really about like, for people seeking services, making sure that the way that we figure out what people's needs are and then connect them to services is really equitable. Going to the left column, deepen the COC shared language and continued conversations on race. There's definitely opportunity for that. In terms of shared language, that's something we've been talking about behind the scenes. I get this question all the time. What do I say? Do I say homeless? Do I say the homeless? Do I say houseless? Do I say people with lived experience? We can figure that out as a community about what's our best practice. And also talking about race, continuing to talk about it explicitly. Staff training. So this is part of my role, right? Is doing trainings for the whole COC and figuring out more trainings on anti-racism, Mitigating implicit bias, which basically means implicit bias is sometimes the stuff that's like running in the background. It's like the computer program running in our brain that we may not even know is running, but that impacts what that output is from us or how we're reacting to situations. LGBTQ allyship, cultural humility, in addition to trauma-informed care. Starting with existing data and moving from awareness to action planning. So this actually came up in another context, but basically we actually are doing a really good job about gathering data, and we need to figure out as a system, not just having the data, but then figuring out how to use it to make decisions and drive change in the framework of equity, right? So holding a lens of equity as we're looking at this data and making decisions about what to do. Going to the left column again, creating client-centered services and processes. So this means like getting collaboration on decision-making with people that are using services and making sure that there's clear messaging and information on what's readily available. Conducting a system mapping of all the COC programs to identify what policies and practices may be perpetuating inequity. So for the purposes of this assessment, they just, the TA providers just like pulled a few documents. I think it was like our coordinated entry policies and procedures, like a couple of the system pieces, but there may be other places and some of our housing programs and eligibility requirements that don't have to do with funding, but that may be perpetuating inequities, maybe at the like provider level. So there's opportunities to dig in there. And then finally, prioritizing the use of qualitative data. So that means not just numbers, but stories, personal anecdotes, things where we're having focus groups, right? And disaggregated quantitative data. So that means not just looking at like, oh, all people experiencing homelessness in our community, but starting to pull those numbers apart in different ways. So looking at what's happening specifically for Black people in our system, looking specifically at what's happening for LGBTQ people in our system. Are they having a different experience than everybody else? So really starting to drill down and using that in the planning. So we can't just look at the big picture. We sometimes have to break it apart. A lot of words from me, but wanted to make sure people that needed to hear it instead of see it could process it that way. And then let's just go to the next slide for 1 minute and we'll probably come back to this one. So the first question, and this is really for council members, but then I want to hear from everybody else, and you can drop it in the chat too or raise your hand. So I just want to get a quick idea of how many people attended that report out on the 14th about the assessment and the findings. If you did, you can raise your hand.
Jamie?
Yeah.
We actually have a poll we can launch.
Oh, of course you do. You guys are awesome. So go with Homebase's poll.
All right, I'm going to launch it now. Everybody should be able to see it on your screen.
Thank you, Mark.
No problem. We can give folks maybe a minute to respond to the poll, and then we can publish the findings.
And everyone's welcome to respond to this, not just council members. Homebase on it as always.
I was going to say, good job on making it that much simpler. That's good.
Technology for the win for once today. I haven't had to tell anybody they're muted, I don't think yet. It'll be me. Great. So it's looking like about half the people here went to it, which is awesome. We had a really good turnout. We had like 90, I think 80-ish people that showed up. That's great.
All right.
I think I can end the poll.
Yeah, I can end it and then we can publish it for folks to see.
Good. So about half the people here went to it. That's fantastic. And then, so the next slide. Oh, Amber says, how are people notified about the presentation? I hadn't heard about it. That's such a great question. So I am the wizard behind the screen that sends out about 90 bajillion emails on behalf of the COC. We use constant contact as our method to do that. And so in a minute, I will put a link in the chat where you can sign up for information on different things. And so you can sign up to get our COC newsletters or updates. The main way that we did it was to send out emails. But that's good feedback because we want to make sure people know, and you can indicate that you're interested in this stuff going forward. So next slide, please. So just want to get some feedback about what struck you, just big, little, and I think council members will go with you first, but we'll also open it up to the community, and you can do it in the chat, or you can raise your hand or.
Real quick, Jamie.
Yeah.
I'm going to screen share Jamboard, and then I can take notes for the discussion. So Tanya, if you can stop your share real quick. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I forgot we discussed this. He's on it.
No worries at all.
Great. So what's going to happen is Mark is just going to be documenting what people are saying, not with your name, but just tracking so that we can see later how this landed for people. So you're welcome to unmute yourselves or drop it in the chat. So there's a bunch of you that went. What struck you?
Jamie, can you do something for me, please?
Absolutely.
Can you recall that meeting? Who was it that did the presentation? Because I remember, because it's in my calendar, but I don't know, the conversation is in so many different meetings. I'm just trying to figure out which one it was.
Joe, I feel you. It has been, since January 1, we've had about 100,000 meetings, it feels like. So yes, I am happy to refresh your memory. So it was on a Friday, and it was an hour long, and it was C4 Innovations. So a woman named Lisa and a woman named Monique from C4 Innovations. They spent the first big chunk sort of going through data. And then towards the end, we got to some of the recommendations. It was, so, I mean, what struck me actually was like, it was a huge amount of information in a short period of time. I'm just gonna put that out there. So if it didn't stick, there's like, I'm not surprised because it was a lot. But does that help you, Joe? I don't know if you remember. I'm trying to think what else might help you remember. I do have the slides posted. If you want to link to that, will that help you, Joe? I can drop a link to the chat. Okay, I'll do it in the chat.
The link's already there, Jamie.
Because you're awesome. Great.
Quick question, these slides are also in the agenda, is that correct?
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. So we put the slides in the agenda and the final report. Okay, so one thing I'm getting is like, maybe that didn't stick, which is really good information.
Hey, Jamie, it's Lauren.
Hey, Lauren.
I didn't actually, I made it to that meeting, but I also made it to the meeting before that, where it was supposed to be giving feedback for that presentation. And there was only myself and one other gentleman.
Yes.
They said that they were having serious trouble getting lived experience consultants to come in and give feedback during this process. So I just wanted to point that out.
That's really important. So thank you. So Lauren was one of the people as part of the assessment process. They wanted to do a listening session for people with lived experience. And we were working really hard behind the scenes to find people that were interested and get them connected and coordinated, and there was a stipend. But there was a big challenges, partly because it was all remote. So you're right, Lauren. So we didn't get a real good, in terms of the input from people with lived experience in this assessment. It was as we would say in nerd terms, an N of 2, right? 2 people were providing that perspective for this particular report. Wayne, I see your hand up.
So I had a little feedback from attending the meeting. I just attended the Friday evening meeting. The first reaction was the amount of quality data that that our county is producing. My background before becoming a minister, I was a very large data analysis, online advertising data, behavioral modeling and targeting and all of that. And it really spoke to the work that the county was doing, that we were able to put that together. The other thing was, I'm grateful that this was presented at the beginning of my term as a council member, because I'm already drinking at the fire hose anyways, you know, and just this is just the very tip of the beginning of the conversation from my perspective. There is a lot to assimilate to be able to talk thoughtfully, I guess would be a term. So I'm grateful that the timing of that. I'm also grateful, even in that meeting, the focus on looking for lived experience. I'm grateful that that is a part of the conversation, a big part, or is meant to be a much bigger part than it has been, because they did not attend the previous meeting that he was referring to. So thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. That's great. Anybody else that attended, council member or community member, that has any thoughts or feedback, or even just like a gut feeling?
I will say, after revisiting those slides that were in the chat, and thank you, Mark, for providing that. Like what we were saying, it didn't stick. Like, I mean, there was so much data, which is great, but like, what do we do with that data now? Like, what is that data telling us? What is, and I think that's the point of this new committee that we're talking about, right? But in 1 hour, that much content, I'm sure that's the reason why I didn't remember it. Because even looking at the slides, I'm like, I don't remember this, but I know I was there. So
that's helpful as we think about how to move forward with this. Jonathan.
Hey there, just a quick note that I thought was really a good prod towards doing more with this initial was the focus on intersectionality and the need to really look at the way the racial and ethnic demography stuff intersects with other identity pieces and who's being served. Just so I think that would be a really valuable a direction to go in looking at specifically things like recidivism. And long-term impacts of interventions, because we know that that's where that stuff's popping up nationally, and I think would really help us be even more targeted in the way we think about how all of those identities come together in an equitable way. So I like that that was flagged.
Thank you, Jonathan. Kiva, and then Lauren.
Yes, and to jump as a jumping off point from that. One of the things that stuck with me was the fact that we need more, in my opinion, we may need more representation of the specific demographics, because, for instance, I believe it was at that meeting where it was said that the greatest portion of the unhoused in Contra Costa County are of Black descent, and we don't have that much representation. So that proportionate amount of representation.
Absolutely, thank you. And then we'll take Lauren's question, and then we're going to move on to another question. Lauren, yeah, go ahead, Lauren.
I don't know if it was in the slides or anything, but I do remember them saying that it takes more than Jamie Jeanette to do this work. So a shout out to you for the work you do, but something has to be done about that as well.
Absolutely. Well, you won't be disappointed. Let's go to the next question. The next question. So this is a time to forget about all of our constraints and restraints and COVID and all the roadblocks that we are like stumbling over all the time. If you lived in utopia, and assuming that there were still inequities, which is not utopia, but in a world with no limitations on funding, on time, on staffing, And we may need to bring up the recommendations again. I don't know how we want to do this with Jamboard and those 9 recommendations, but which, and I want to hear from the council members first and then also community. Which thing would you want to focus on first? If you didn't have to worry about limitations, what would you focus on first? And I'm trying to see if there's a way that we can
just screen share the recommendations and I can just take notes in the background for this one.
Okay.
Tanya, you want to screen share that slide with the recommendations again, please?
So this is your like pie in the sky chance to, in a ideal world. So Juno, let's see, hold on, we're getting to it. There we go. So Juno, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So for me, like my pie in the sky thought is like, well, I see like sort of links that can be drawn between some of these recommendations. And I also see links between those that can be drawn to what we heard from, I believe her name was Elaine. I can't remember when that meeting was, but
Monday, I think.
Monday.
Tuesday,
Yes.
About the program models.
Yes.
Yes.
I see like overlap and between like the ideas presented in both those, in both these meetings. And I also see like areas that seem they could conflict a bit. For example, what we heard from Elaine about, for example, keeping the, I can't remember the actual name of the stat that she mentioned, but keeping a particular stat, I think it was, spots filled, I can't remember, but it was above 95%. If anybody can remember that, what that stat was called. But like focusing on that, I think that during that meeting, I was thinking to myself, like having been in one of the committees to approve new projects and to reapprove projects for funding, I was thinking to myself that, well, those projects that fell below the 95% were also serving some of the more at-risk populations. And that's sort of why they were important. So I see like a need probably to focus in and clear up the idea of like both, practicing and doing the things that some of the recommendations that Elaine posed for our programs, but also they may end up conflicting with the recommendations here in kind of obscure ways that we can't anticipate.
Great, thank you. I saw Wayne and then Joe and then Lene, and then we might need to move on to the next piece. And I'm just gonna flag, this is like the very beginning of these conversations. So like, don't freak out if we can't get to your question or comment, because there's gonna be a bunch more times to talk about this. Wayne, Joe, and then Lene.
So agreeing with Juno about the modeling in this, how there's a lot of carryover between the two. I think developing a plan for integrating partners with lived experience, because that lived experience of being homelessness, I can tell you from my own experiences, is even further marginalization. So I think pie in the sky. If I had ultimate pie in the sky and endless amounts of money, I'd be taking that and trying to get as many people housed as possible. But for this, I would say the partners with lived experience.
Thank you, Wayne. Joe, and then Lene.
And I'm just going to echo that, because nothing about us without us. But I'll even go a little bit further into this outreach part of it, because I think that to capture that lived experience, there's a lot of like trauma-informed training that needs to happen. There's this like humanity thing that's slightly missing when we talk about the system and the data and how we do our things. So there's like, to get the lived experience perspective, there's first needs to be an understanding on how to address it in crisis, how to address it trauma-informed way without re-hurting them, re-traumatizing them, or traumatizing the person that's in the middle of it. So the lived experience perspective, absolutely.
Thank you, Joe. Lene.
Sorry, taking a second to get off mute. I definitely agree with Joe. I think there's a piece that a lot of our feedback systems and how we're trying to get feedback from people with lived experience are challenging and hard to navigate. And on top of that, because of that, it then causes more trauma because just system challenges is traumatic in itself. And then on top of that, having the conversations of asking them to say what works, what doesn't work, you know, what were some of your experiences in this system of care, for example. And I know that being on the contract health services side, this is a big conversation with public health and even our healthcare for the homeless program as well. Would love to like have these conversations together, because I think a lot of times we're looking for input on the clinical side of things and getting a lot of feedback on kind of shared, because they see us all as one. So I think this is great, but I do think my top choices would be like creating a client-centered service and process, having that collaboration with the clients and developing a plan for integrating those partners.
I hear you.
with
So I'm
logistics.
hearing that. And again, so much of this is about breaking down silos, and there's like big silos between healthcare for the homeless and the work we're doing, even though we're, as you said, working with the same population. So we're going to move on because we have time constraints, but there are going to be many, many more opportunities. And again, please put stuff in the chat. Can you go to the next slide? Or keep going, keep going. We're going to, so what we want to move to is some action on this so that we actually have a place and a group to start thinking about this and what we want to do with it and how we want to move it. I see Joe with her hand up. So the staff recommendation from H3 and home base is to establish a temporary working group. And so a working group is different from a committee. So a committee is usually like it's established, it's where things going to live forever. Right now, what we're trying to do is just get like a time limited working group of people who are really interested in like getting into the weeds on this report, helping set up some community conversations to gather more feedback, and then make recommendations back to y'all, this council, about next steps, including where this work should live, because there's the options, right? It could be a working group under another existing committee. It could be its own committee. There's a lot of different options, but we don't want to just like have that decision made very quickly. So the membership would be council members and the meetings would be open to the public. And probably we would be doing this work over like 3 months. So the proposal is, or the recommendation at this point from staff is to develop a working group. And then we will also, if y'all want to do that, then we would identify people from the council that want to be the anchors for that. And then we will be putting information out to the community about when those meetings are, so everybody can be part of those conversations. Do people have questions about that, about sort of what the next steps are being proposed? And also like thoughts, discussion, is there a different way you want to start to move this forward? So this is sort of a planning group for the planning. I know that sounds ridiculous, but this is a big important piece. So we want to make sure there's some really strategic thinking about it in a carved out space.
Will this also take up space for the real cohort that we did? Is it the same material? Are we going to add that into this, or is it going to stay separate?
That's a really good question. I think that's something for this group to figure out, because there's been this like awkward parallel thing of like equity and consumer engagement as kind of two separate things, but also like really connected. So I think that's something for this group to really figure out. And I don't think that they're totally separate. So yes, I think, and it came out in the recommendations, like figuring out consumer engagement and voice is like an essential part of the equity recommendation. So yes, I think that's part of the work of this group to figure out. Council members, other questions, thoughts? Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Oops, back one. So wanted to put this forward. So Juno, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Okay. So yeah, so we'll go to an action item. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve establishing an equity working group and selecting members? Are we selecting members today, Jamie?
Well, right. So that's a good question. So we could do it as two separate motions. Or if there are people that are interested on the council, you could kind of throw your hat in and we could do them as two. I mean, as one motion. Christy, I see your hand up.
Yeah, does it have to be, if you're on the council, does it have to be you, or can you have a by proxy from your organization or someone else?
We don't have a mechanism right now to officially have proxies. That's something we're actually going to work on in our government. But you could have, say you are with an agency and you choose not to step in as the official council member, but you have, a key staffer that is engaged and attending those meetings and participating. It just, the establishing like council member link to this is just kind of a formality, but these are going to be designed to have like a key group of people that are committed to being part of the conversation. So like, for example, like Deanne couldn't say, yes, I want to throw my hat in the ring, but actually I'm going to ask Bill to be my person there, but maybe she doesn't throw her hat in the ring to be an official working group member, but Bill knows it's his job to go to these meetings. Does that make sense?
I mean, it may not to me, but that's just me and my brain today. If it makes sense to everyone else, then great.
Home base, if you have anything to say on this, this is a good time.
I just want to make sure that we are engaging people that maybe aren't, it's not limited to people on council in this call. I've heard from a lot of people that it would be great if I could get my folks with boots on the ground. I could have from other programs and a different vantage point, I think would be critical in this work. So that's
absolutely
what I'm looking for.
And I think that falls into my realm of making sure that we are getting the message out far and wide that these meetings are happening and that everyone's engaged, invited, and that their input will be incorporated. So I hear you loud and clear, Chrissy.
Thank you.
Okay, then. So if I understand correctly, we're making a, would anyone like to make a motion to approve establishing the equity work group?
Juno, I have a question.
Yes.
If I may, so the feedback that I've heard here is that many of us that did attend, because it was such a information overload, may need more time, and this was sort of the introduction, to really get their head wrapped around what we've already established. So I would, ask in support of that, perhaps, if we do have a motion to create the working group, that perhaps we wait till the next meeting to appoint the members. That way we have additional time for those of us that can make the time and to look at the data and to look at the slides and ask questions. Just a suggestion.
How's that sound to you, Jamie?
It's up to you all. So I think one of the things that we are constantly struggling with work is feeling urgent about wanting it to get started, but not wanting to rush things. So the thing I'll just add is like, if we wait until a month to approve those members, that means we have a month where we won't be able to get this rolling. If we don't know who the members are, then we won't be able to start the scheduling. So that's just part of my thinking about, doing that. So I see Lauren and Joe both have their hats in the ring. Home base, I don't know if you have any thoughts about the best way to move forward with this wicket.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's up to the group to decide. I mean, the staff recommendation on the table is to create a working group now and to appoint members if the council is ready to do that. And if not, then you can choose to break it up or to table the entire thing for the next meeting. But Jamie is right.
Yeah.
Then you would lose a month of potentially planning and scheduling.
And honestly, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of conflict about whether or not this should happen, as far as I can tell from this conversation. So my recommendation is that people on the council that are interested in this, throw your names in the ring. So I see already Juno, And as Deanne said, like, we can start with the people who can commit to it today, and then you can always join the committees later. That's not a problem. We just want to make sure we have like a key group of people. So I see, in terms of council members, I see Joe, Juno, Pat Mims.
And also, if we sign up today, we have the opportunity to pull out if it's not something that we see ourselves
Totally.
wanting to do.
Yes, exactly.
And then
You're not
also,
signing
there's
your life
two
away.
hands up, and I wasn't sure if you were taking hands or not, but if we're
I
gonna
think,
wait
good
for that.
question. Are the hands up related specifically to this action item? Because I want to make sure we get through the rest of our agenda, and we are going to have more opportunity to talk about the report and what those plans might look like. Gita, you're saying that you are interested in this work. Okay, great. So I think the recommendation, okay, good. I see you. Got it, Gita. So the recommendation is to make an equity working group to focus on this and approve people's names who have said they're interested. So that's Pat, Joe, Juno. Are there any other council members specifically? And then I see community members, so you will get some information for sure once we get that going.
Okay, if there's no other people want to throw their hat in the chat or by unmuting, then we'll if anybody would like to make a motion to approve the establishment of the equity working group and appoint the members that we have discussed. I'm open to hearing that motion now.
I'm willing to make that motion to appoint the equity working group and the members that have put their hats in the ring.
Thank you.
I second that.
Thank you. So then with that second, we can begin. Before we begin with the roll call vote, I'm going to leave the room open for any last minute discussion. I know we've already discussed this a little bit, but if anybody has any last minute things they'd like to point out before we take a vote, now's the time.
I see, Deanne, are you throwing your name in to be part of the working group?
Yes.
Looks like there's no discussion in the chat, and I don't hear anybody unmuting, so we'll move to the roll call vote. Iman Novin.
Yes.
Margaret Schultz.
Aye.
Terry House. Leslie Gleason.
Yes.
Kiva Dean. Joe Bruno.
Aye.
Alejandra Chamberlain.
Hi.
Gabriel Lemus.
Aye.
Angela Bullock Hayes.
Aye.
Wayne Earl.
Aye.
Lene Altman.
Aye.
Thank you. Deanne Pern.
Hi.
Tony Yusufari.
Aye.
Sean Ray.
Aye.
Manjit Sapal. Pat Mims. Who should be in the
He's an
chat.
I in the chat. He's an I.
Masaki Hirayama. Maureen Nelson.
She's an I in the chat.
Perfect. And Juno Hedrick and myself is an I. So I believe that motion passes. Great job, everybody.
Great, we can move to the next slide. Well done, Juno.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody else, for asking such good questions. And yeah, we'll move on to the next item now. So our next item is our COVID-19 updates, and we'll be hearing from Jenny Robbins from H3 about that. Jenny, if you feel free to unmute.
Thank you, Juno. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jenny Robbins. I'm with H3. Happy to say things are slowing down a bit with regards to COVID. I don't know if you guys are feeling like things are kind of simmering down. But our PUI hotel, our occupancy rates have been trending downward over the last couple weeks or so. I think as of today, we're at around 29% occupancy, and in previous weeks we've been close to the top, and really working hard to move folks through so we can open up new beds, and so that we are seeing a nice trending downward. And other than that, we don't have any other updates or new information on our COVID guidance. No new information that's really come down from the CDC or the state that I can bring to the table. So that's really the end of my report, unless anyone has any questions. Hearing none. All right, everybody.
Don't see any questions in the chat either. Thank you so much, Jenny, for your update. And thank you to, very important to continue to keep everybody updated on COVID-19. Next, we'll move on to our funding updates, which is coming from Home Base and H3. I will hand it over to Jamie and Mark for this one.
Yeah, Jamie, I'll start off. I think I was asked just to do a quick update on the COC NOFO, which is the Continuum of Care Notice of Funding Opportunity through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The update is there is no update. We have not received any word about awards. I can't really predict when they might come, but we will let the council know, and of course the individual providers know as soon as we hear. And then I think, am I passing it over to you, Jamie, or to Christy?
Actually to Christy. So Christy, I'll give you the floor. I think just to preface for you guys, we don't have any big updates, but we do want to find out what you want to know about in the future. But Christy, I'll turn it over to you in case there's anything you want to share out.
Yeah, real quickly, I'll share out that as most people know, we're in the Home Key 2 round within the state. And the early submission date of January 31st, where you could get bonus points for early submission, has passed. However, they are still accepting applications up through, I believe it's May, and I can double check on that, May 2nd, I think. For a Home Key 2, I just got an email from HCD saying, hey, I see that Contra Costa has put in no applications for Home Key 2, just wanting to make sure that people know we are still open and accepting applications. So just wanted to throw that out, as well as reminding folks Home Key 3 will open up in September. So there is many mechanisms in which if a city entity, or if you have a project and you want to partner with your city, they are still accepting applications. Additionally, I know that March 1st, can't hold me to this because it's the state, but they are supposed to be sending out a family solutions grant. It'll be very similar to what the encampment resolution grant was through HCFC. And this will be, from what we can tell, one-time funding, innovative funding over the course of several years. So if you are working on a new project, or if you have a innovative idea, please reach out to either your city or the county so we can begin exploring that. Again, that's supposed to come out March 1st, the RFP. So we don't have the details, but we will be sure to pass that along as soon as we get it. And additionally, we are getting ready to set up our community process for HAP 3. We have gotten notification of our allocation, so that will be a community process in which you all will have input of how that money gets spent. So we are looking to have that, I would say probably March or April. And so we, again, will send out all the communication around that because we have to submit what our community process and plan is around that by June, I believe. So again, no huge updates, but there is new things coming down. So we will keep everyone abreast of that. And if anyone has any questions on anything, I'm happy to answer if maybe I glossed over something or missed something.
Are there any funding updates that anybody, or any things that people want to hear about in the future in particular? If so, you can either drop it in the chat or just let us know. So we're bringing you the information you want. Okay.
Looks like there's no questions, and then we'll move on to hearing again from, well, thank you, Homebase and H3. We'll move on to hearing again from Mark, who's going to give us a staff report.
Thank you very much, Gina. You're doing a great job, by the way.
Thank you.
So I am just calling out the part of the agenda where we focus on the staff report. The staff report was included in the materials that were sent in advance of the meeting. So just providing some space if folks have questions or comments about anything in the staff report, go ahead and unmute or leave a comment in the chat. I see that Joe has a question in the chat. Is the discussion around land trusts part of the funding discussion? I know Erica was working on land trusts, but not sure what happened with that work. Someone from H3 want to take that question?
So I'm just reading it right now. I'll have to get back to you on that, Joe, and find out what that is, because that is not something that I'm aware of, but I'll look into it and let you all know.
Thanks, Christy. Any other comments, questions about anything in the staff report? All right.
Perfect. Seeing no other questions or hands raised, we'll move on to our next item. Thank you, Mark, for sharing that staff report out. So our next item is going to be news business. First, we're going to be hearing about the 2020 Council on Homelessness work plan, and we're going to hear again from Jamie Jeanette. Take it away.
Thank you, Juno. Sorry, me again. Next slide, please. And you can go to the next slide. So I want to have a quick conversation about something we've been working on behind the scenes, which is essentially a work plan for the council. And this has come up recently. I mean, it actually comes up kind of every year in various places, but it came up about 2 years ago. The Board of Supervisors decided to do some more formal reporting that they wanted from their advisory boards. And as one of my roles is I kind of fill out the end of the year report, what has the council been doing, blah, blah, blah. And it says in there, like, basically, is the council doing work that matches up with their work plan? But there hadn't really been conversation about a work plan prior to that. And there also are questions that we get about, like, well, what's the council working on? What are their priorities? And we have this information in a lot of different places. So this is something that we've been talking about behind the scenes, Homebase and I, just about like developing something that captures what is already happening, but in kind of in the form of a work plan, so that we all know what the work that we're committing to do. And then when we go to report out, we can say, yes, we did or didn't do that. I think that also will help us decide what we do and don't have capacity to take on, because we will then have like, okay, so here's all the things we already said that we're going to do. Homebase did a great job building a glossary. So like the very, very last pages of the packet that you got, that was huge this month, has a glossary that Homebase put together of like what these different things mean that are in the draft work plan, which is also in the packet. And so Homebase really developed it by essentially just like raking up all the things that we know that we're doing and bucketing it. So I just wanted some context for like what this is, why we're talking about it. Part of it is that's the beginning of the year. I think we're also like with some of the work happening through PATH, like I think we're doing a better job as a whole community and as a COC to start to have really what we're doing and why and how we know that we're succeeding crystallize a little better. So this is also in service of that. So I don't know if it would be helpful to pull up the draft work plan, but we wanted to just like throw it out and see if it matches basically your understanding of what you're committing to do. The way that it would be used is essentially kind of at the end of the year when we do our report to the board as an advisory board to say, essentially, did you do what you said you're going to do? We're using that kind of as a template. And it's a way to just kind of track all the threads of all the pieces. So Mark, I don't know if you have, do you have, can you pull, oh, Mark's already pulled it up. So it's on pages 106 to 110 of the ginormal PDF that we put up. And you'll be able to see, I'm actually going to pull it up myself so that I can reference it real quickly. Watch, we're all going to pull it up and it will crash because we're all trying to look at it at the same time. Actually, I'll look at it in a different place. You know, because there's nothing on there that should surprise you. It's really just a reflection of the work that's already happening. But, you know, wanted to really run it by folks as it's the work plan for the council. And see if there were any thoughts or concerns. It's not that it doesn't even really go anywhere. It's not like it gets submitted to the board but just like as a tool for us to use both internally as staff and also potentially for the council when people want to know, like, what are we working on? And they have it broken down basically by the quarters, essentially, the main activities and then other activities.
Jamie, would you want me to screen share this, the work plan itself?
I think so. Would that be helpful for the council? Yes, I'm seeing nodding. Yes, that would be helpful.
Okay. Tanya, can you stop screen sharing for a second? Thank you.
Great.
Just let me know if you want me to scroll around, make it bigger.
I think so. I'm looking for council faces. So you can see there's basically from January through March, the main activities. So what we're doing today, reviewing the takeaways from the Racial Equity Action Plan and identifying next steps. We did that today. Discussing new program models to be used for performance-based contracting. That work started this week. Launching HUD compliance monitoring process for COC-funded providers. So that's work that's happening in the background. Our stakeholder meeting that's coming up later in February, discussing the American Rescue Act, home funds with a variety of stakeholders. You can see it's kind of that level of stuff of like, what are you all talking about and holding on to? It also is just sort of like an anchor for the schedule for the year. So like, you know, in the first quarter, you're selecting your chair and vice chair. We do an orientation. It's that level and identifying, you know, committee members for all these different committees. We are completing the quarterly report to the board. So it just kind of gives you the rhythm and it may help you understand the work that's coming down the pike too. And pretty much all of this is stuff that's already been set in motion or that you've probably seen before, so someone place. Deanne says this is helpful. Thank you for putting it together. Yes, home base, bless you. So just want to open up for discussion. Great. I don't know that there's necessarily decisions that need to get made, but wanted to just flag this as like a resource that we have and see if there are and in home base, I don't know if you have any comments as you were developing it, if you had any additional thoughts. But really it's just got like, it's almost like a calendar for what we're doing, right? You can see when we have the NOFO process, we see when the Homeless Awareness Month is. So good. We're not committing your firstborn to anything. So that's it. Mostly just wanted to present this to you. And I think we would post this on our website as part of the like about us or in our strategic plan section or somewhere so that all of us can go back and look at it and see what the heck we're doing and what do we say we're going to do or what's coming up. Okay, any discussion? Joe says clapping. Okay. I think that's it.
Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah.
We'll move on to our next item then, if there's no discussion. And there is any other questions, you can go ahead and leave them in the chat and we'll make sure to see them. Next, we'll move on to a presentation by Jay Deloto from the Veterans Affairs Northern California Healthcare System. Yeah, so Jay, feel free to take it away. Is Jay having a problem unmuting?
Of course, that would be me. Jamie, you
There we
cursed
go.
me.
Sorry.
Yes. Do we have my slides, Tanya? Okay, great. I don't see them though. Okay, so, oh, they're there. Perfect. All right. So thank you so much. So my name is Jay Deloto. I am the VA Coordinated Entry Specialist for the homeless program in Yolo County. I overlook Yolo County, Contra Costa, and Solano. And a little bit about me. I have been with the VA for 10 years. I've been with social services for 20 years. I like to think that I look younger than I am. And and so now I get to share what we have to offer with you guys. So next slide. So a little quick snapshot of Northern California healthcare system. We have we serve roughly 377,700 veterans, and maybe a little bit more. And we approximately cover 40,000 square miles, all the way from Redding to Contra Costa County. We have 13 COCs. We did have 14, but recently our Alameda County is now underneath San Francisco VA. So we now have 13 COCs, and we have 4 VA coordinated entry specialists. Next slide. So I'm going to do this instead, hold on. So we have a by names this case conference just for veterans. We have it bi-weekly, the first and third Tuesday of the month. It's from 9 to 11. The list of veterans are generated from HMIS. It's facilitated by Shelter Inc. And we mainly, in that meeting, the main veteran service providers in Contra Costa County are at that table. So we discuss program updates, but we mainly focus on veterans' housing status, challenges that they're running into, and how we can kind of collaborate and bring our eligible resources to help those veterans overcome any barriers and meet their goals. We also have a leadership team meeting. We have that quarterly, the 4th Tuesday of the month from 10 to 11. It's facilitated by the 2 SSVF providers, which is Shelter Inc. and Berkeley Food and Housing. At that meeting, we provide program updates, policy and advocacy efforts, and address barriers to veterans' needs. And I think mainly leadership that can actually have decision capacity are at those meetings. So we can make decisions pretty promptly. Next slide. So it says here, yeah, it says they're monthly, but it's quarterly meetings, sorry. But the main providers that come to those leadership meetings is the VA, Berkeley Food and Housing's SSVF, Shelter Inc. SSVF, County Homeless Program Service Providers, Coordinated Entry, Veterans Accessions House, Transitional Housing, Operation Dignity, and Source of Plowshares Aftercare Case Managers. Next slide. Okay, so what programs do we provide? So we have shelters. We have some beds at Brookside Shelter, some beds at Shelter Solano and Philip Thorne Respite. And they are emergency shelter beds up to 90 days. We have case managers on site that help out with housing, income, employment, any other needs, getting connected to the VA services if needed. Eligibility is to be homeless or at risk, and they need to be eligible for VA healthcare. Referrals, they can get a referral through VA Social Work Triage, which the phone number is 925-404-4887. They can also walk into our Martinez Clinic at 150 Muir Road, Building 19. The hours of triage is 8 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. So somebody is always has that triage phone on them, and they're always on staff during those hours. You can also get referred through the veteran case conferences. We also have grants per diem, which is transitional housing. The one that we have in Contra Costa County is Veterans Accessions House. And it is temporary housing up to 24 months, also has case managers on site to help out with the similar things, housing, income, employment, and whatever else is needed. There is a slight difference. You need to be a little bit more stabilized to be in transitional housing. So eligibility is homeless or at risk. You can have a discharge status of other than dishonorable discharge, at least 1 day of active duty, and meet clinical definition of the model. So at Veterans Accessions House, there's 2 models. There's the Sith model and the Bridge model. The Sith model is where a veteran needs more support around services, and a Bridge model is when a veteran comes into the program, they already have housing lined up. So they could be in the HUD Bash program or an SSVF program that's working on specifically housing. Referrals can be submitted also through Triage or the Vet Case Conference, but you could also do a direct referral. So a veteran could actually call Veterans Accessions House directly and refer themselves. Then we have supportive services for veterans and families, which is SSVF. And they provide temporary financial assistance for permanent housing. They do rapid resolution, temporary financial assistance, homeless prevention, shallow subsidy. They have case management, and one of their newer services is enhanced legal services, which is really needed. So I'm glad that's happening. Berkeley Food and Housing and Shelter Inc. are the 2 agencies that have our grants. And for them, you need to be homeless or at risk, other than dishonorable discharge, at least 1 day of active duty, AMI 50% or lower. And you can also, a veteran can self-refer by calling Berkeley Food and Housing or Shelters Inc.'s intake line. They can also go through VA Social Work Triage, and they can also do it through the Vet Case Conference because the SSVF providers are at those case conferences. So we also have GPD Aftercare Case Management. So Source to Plowshares and Operation Dignity have those grants. And what this program is once a veteran goes from homeless to housing, they may need more case management, and not every program has case management attached to it. So they provide that case management once the veteran is housed for 6 months. And so part of that is that they cannot be already part of a program that has case management attached to it. So Source to Plowshares and Operation Dignity, they can also call directly and self-refer, and also, once again, they can go through Triage or the Vet Case Conference. Next slide. All right, so one of our most popular programs is HUD Bash. So what is HUD Bash? And most people have heard of HUD Bash, but what is HUD Bash? It's the collaboration of HUD housing vouchers and VA supportive services. So the way I like to explain it to people is like pretty much it's Section 8 for veterans. So Section 8 is just the voucher, but for HUD Bash, it's the Section 8 voucher plus the VA's case management, provides case management. And so what does that look like? So we do the intakes. We help them get their vouchers. We help them find their housing, and we continue to case manage them. And it depends on what their needs are. Sometimes I used to be a HUD Bash case manager. So sometimes it's weekly meetings. Sometimes it's more than weekly. Sometimes it's monthly. Usually goes down to every 3 months. And then the goal is to eventually graduate a veteran from case management because they're pretty stable and they don't need it anymore. And we have veterans that don't, and that's okay too. So to be eligible for VASH, To be eligible, you need to be VA healthcare. You need to be eligible for VA healthcare services. But now, just recently, within the last year, there's been a HUD Bash expansion, and we're still rolling that out. And I'm gonna, in the next slide, I'm gonna kind of go more into detail of what that is. But now it's expanded so you can also be other than honorable. You cannot be a registered sex offender. You have to be 50% AMI or lower, homeless or at risk for being homeless, and functionally independent, and that's tricky. So yes, we do want you to be functionally independent, but I have had veterans come in and they've had a caregiver that was with them and they were on the voucher, and so therefore they were pretty independent along with a caregiver. So that's a case by case. Priority groups are chronically homeless, which is defined by disabling condition plus being homeless for 1 year or more. Veterans with minor children, women, OAF, OIF, OND, which is a period of service, disabled veterans, age 70 or older. And how do you get screened? So you get screened by either coming through social work triage. I think that's probably the best way, or you can reach out to me. I get a lot of people reaching out to me saying, hey, I think, I would like to refer my veteran, or I have a veteran I'm working with and I'd like to refer to HUD Bash. The first thing I do is to see if they're in our system. Then I check to see with our eligibility, if they're even eligible. And then from there, I go ahead and refer them on to HUD Bash team. Next slide. So HUD Bash expansion. So the HUD Bash expansion, which I said, we're still rolling it out, but we are doing it case by case. We're still working with eligibility, but what it is now we can now accept veterans who have honorable discharge, general discharge, other than honorable discharge, bad conduct discharge from a special court martial. Who's ineligible is dishonorable discharge and bad conduct discharges from a general court martial. So this essentially mirrors the eligibility for the SSVF and GPD programs. But this is so tricky that I would just say, if you have a veteran that you think may be eligible, just go ahead and refer them over to me anyways, even if you don't think they are, and I can double check with eligibility. Okay, next slide. Okay, so as I said, that we have social workers on triage, the clinic and phone. And I have to tell you, I've been around a long time, and I love access. I think it's so important to have easy, low barrier access, and we do. And I even rotate on those triage phones, and I like it. I like being able to. I like that even providers can contact that triage phone. I've had even providers within the VA contact that triage phone. So I think that's important. And as I said, a veteran can walk into the clinic and go right up to the front desk and say, I'd like to speak to the social worker on triage for the day. Or they can call the phone number, and somebody always has that on them during the office hours. I've also added on mental health triage. So mental health triage is not underneath homeless program services, but it's one of the most important phone numbers besides us to have on hand. And so you can call that phone number, and they're the exact same thing. Somebody's going to answer it, and if a veteran is not engaged in services but wants to, that's the phone number to call. If they're already engaged and they're having a challenging time, they can call that number and say, hey, I'd like to coordinate a time to speak to a provider earlier, or my provider's out, I need to speak to somebody else. And they will help triage that right there and then. They're amazing. So yeah, just definitely wanted to include that phone number on there. Next. So I'm open to questions if anybody has any questions, or you can always email me, and you can ask me questions that way too. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't have a question. I was just going to say that I called the number and I got a case manager in the same day, and I was housed in less than a month. And I'm very appreciative of that.
That's great to hear. Thank you so much. That's good to hear that it's working. Thank you. Anybody else?
And feel free to leave any questions in the chat if you can't unmute.
All right. Well, feel free, if nobody has any questions, feel free to email me. I love when people contact me and we connect. So yeah, feel free. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jay. That was a wonderful presentation. And it's really, like you said, it's really good to hear that it's working. And thank you for sharing that too, Lauren, your experience. Well, if there's no more questions, we'll move on to our last bit of new business. We have a presentation from Abby from the Bay Area Legal Aid and H3 Partnership. Abby, feel free to take it away.
Thanks so much. And thanks everyone for having me here. I'm just going to talk really briefly about a new partnership between Bay Area Legal Aid and H3, focused on homelessness prevention and also services for the homeless population in Contra Costa County. So I really appreciate your time. We can go on to the next slide. Yep, again, so introduction to this partnership. My contact information is below, but I can give that out after if folks have questions or want to connect offline. Next slide. So what is Bay Area Legal Aid? I'm sure most of you are pretty familiar, but in case you're not, we are a regional nonprofit law firm, and we provide free legal services to eligible low-income or extremely low-income individuals in the 7 Bay Area counties. All of our services are free, and we cover all cities within these regions. We have about 150 staff members located throughout the Bay Area. So that includes staff attorneys, but also support staff, paralegals, and some social workers. In this new collaborative partnership with H3, our goal will be to improve the stability of the participants by addressing barriers to housing as well as housing preservation. And those barriers could be reentry related, it could be relating to access to public benefits, any number of different legal issues. Next slide. Thank you. So the referrals will work by having, we're going to be working on training case managers to screen their patients when they meet either during their first meeting or subsequent meetings for housing related legal issues. If the case manager thinks that there might be a legal issue flagged through that screening process, then they can send the referral to Bay Area Legal Aid via email. Staff attorneys at Bay Legal will review that referral. And if it seems appropriate, they'll reach out to the potential client and conduct an intake by phone. And then if appropriate, a case will be opened and some level of representation will be provided, whether it be kind of on the lower end of the spectrum where we give advice counsel over the phone, or the higher end where we provide full representation. It could include litigation or an administrative complaint, something along those lines. Next slide. Thank you. So the benefits of a partnership like this, one of the biggest benefits, I think, is the ability to provide a warm handoff for the referral. It increases the likelihood that the client will actually connect to the legal help. Without a partnership like this, in order to access Bay Area Legal Aid services, a patient or a client would need to call our legal advice line. And that's a centralized intake unit where we do all of our intakes by phone, and then people get scheduled for appointments at local offices. However, there can be long wait times on that phone line. The hours can be limited. They do often have to, if they hit capacity, close the lines early. So this type of partnership makes sure that clients are able to have easier access to Bay Area Legal Aid without having to kind of get the runaround of the legal advice line. The patient will also have a consult with the case manager, also to minimize the sense of getting, the runaround, where the case manager is trained to do an assessment and make sure that this is something that Bay Area Legal Aid can assist with before making that referral. We also, it enables a close collaboration between lawyers and case managers to really be able to help the most vulnerable population. Ways that case managers have helped us in the past is with folks that are really difficult to reach, or, if someone changes their phone number or loses their phone, or, is moving from place to place, case managers have really been essential in helping us to get in contact and also maintain contact with clients that we're representing. It also provides a heightened level of access to legal help for referred patients compared to the general public. So I kind of touched on that, but it just makes access to legal services a little bit easier for folks who are already a part of H3 and accessing services there to get an attorney. Next slide. Oh, and so that's all I have. I wanted to keep it short, but if folks have any questions, I see in the chat there's a question about if we serve undocumented folks. So technically, unfortunately, due to the federal funding we receive, we aren't supposed to serve undocumented people, but there are ways around that, including if we can show that they might be eligible for citizenship or for some sort of visa, then we are able to help with housing or benefits issues. And some examples of that include, but aren't limited to, if someone might be eligible for a U visa or a T visa or something along those lines. So we really, I mean, the technical answer is no, but we really do our best to try and get around the rules and serve everyone we can. Are there any other questions? Oh, how much do we charge? Our services are always free. The individual referred needs to qualify for our services, so they need to be below 200% of the federal poverty level in order to qualify. There are also some exceptions to that, but just because of the volume of referrals we typically get and people accessing our services, it's typically below 200%. But if someone qualifies, then the services are all free. Did I miss anything? Who pays us? We get a lot of federal grants, state grants. The grant for this particular partnership is coming from the California State Bar. I can definitely provide like some more in-depth information on exactly where it came from. It came from AB 164 back in 2019, but I don't really want to get into the weeds on that right now, but I'm happy to talk about it offline. Any other questions?
This is Jamie. I do communications for the COC. So is this something we should let the community know about, or sort of focus on providers because it's really going to be by provider referral?
I think focus on providers makes the most sense because they can, we're going to be training providers on using screening tools and making sure that appropriate cases are being referred.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is my contact information. Please email me or call me if you have questions. I'm happy to talk more. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Abby. And if there's no other questions, then we'll move on to community announcements. So this is that time period I said at the beginning of the agenda where you can bring any non-agenda related announcements to the table. You can either post them in the chat or feel free to unmute or raise your hand and we will facilitate getting everybody heard.
I see Tony's hand up.
Go ahead, Tony.
Thank you. So I'm not sure if everybody is aware, but we've been the grantee for the old shelter plus care program, which is now the COC rental subsidy program for the past 6 years or so. And we've been in partnership with H3 for all that time as a sub-grantee to administer the eligibility piece of the shelter plus care program, or the COC rental subsidy program now. We were notified by H3 that they were no longer going to be able to maintain their role as a sub-grantee. So we did an RFP back in November, I want to say. And I just wanted to announce that we have selected Hope Solutions to step in as the new sub-grantee to administer the rental subsidy program for the various COCs rental subsidy programs, what were known as the shelter plus care program, various project-based and tenant-based programs. So I do want to say congratulations to Hope Solutions. We're looking forward to that partnership, but I also wanted to really kind of give a big shout out to H3, all of their shelter plus care team for over 2 decades of partnership on this program. And we really did a lot of great things, and I'm glad to see the programs continuing, and hope to do great things in the future.
Thank you for that update, Tony. Is
I see one
there?
there's one in the chat too.
Oh, perfect. There's an update from Amber Espinosa. They say that the Veterans Ascension House currently has open beds for transitional housing for homeless veterans. And Iman says, congratulations, Hope Solutions.
Amber, if you have information about how folks can connect in your programs, it'd be great to put in the chat. Tanya, do you mind doing the next slide? I have a quick one. So the city of Concord is hiring, similar to the way the city of Antioch has a paid staff person that's really trying to focus on homeless issues in the city. The city of Concord is hiring for a similar position. They're going to be a community services manager under the housing division. I will try and drop that in the chat. But they will be responsible for coordinating the city's efforts around homeless services and managing their community grants programs. I think that it's open for a couple of weeks, but it's exciting. And I think it's helpful for the system when there are specific point people at each city. And so I think, you know, what that person will actually be able to do will evolve, but they are hiring. So if you're looking, there's an opportunity. Let me see if I can grab that link actually and drop it in, but that's it. And I don't know if there's anybody from the city that's here. I think they were going to try and make it, but if anyone from the city wants to add anything. Okay, that's all I have.
Yeah, just drop that link in the chat, and I'm sure that there'll be some people interested in it. So not seeing any other community announcements in the chat, or any other hands raised.
There's two hands up.
Oh,
I see Deanne and Jill.
We'll start with Deanne.
Thank you. I wanted to make an announcement too that the Multi-Faith Action Coalition, in partnership with the City of Antioch, in partnership with Hope Solutions, applied for a Bay Area Partnership for the Future Breakthrough Grant, and just received notice that we have been awarded, and MFAC is the lead agency in partnership with Antioch on this. And it is a 2-year grant. And as part of this, the City of Antioch will hire a policy fellow focused on homeless policy. And then the community-based organizations will be doing a lot of community organizing. The REP program from Hope Solutions will be doing outreach to hire, recruit, train, and support additional reps from the City of Antioch. And the whole intention is to kind of create a policy environment where we can fast track and prioritize affordable housing development. So a lot more to come on that, but it's a really wonderful opportunity for our county and for the City of Antioch. And it took a lot of partnership to get that grant through, and it will take a lot of partnership to administer it. So more to come.
Thank you, Deanne. And Joe, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so the Office of Consumer Empowerment, the OCE, is putting on a update for SB 803. And I was just gonna put it all in the comments, but there's all of that. It's at 10:30 to 12 tomorrow morning. And we're looking for folks with lived experience to put in like the best practices. This is what's gonna kind of, this is the best practices of peer support in our county. So that's what this discussion is around the state approving the peer support. So if you can make it, it would be really great to have you.
And Joe, just a quick question to clarify: if somebody was interested in learning more about those peer support practices, could they also attend?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you are at all interested in the peer support movement in our county, this is going to be the update on that. So it's just a good place to start if you haven't already. So thank you.
Perfect. Wouldn't want to miss it. I'll be there myself. Now that I'll put that in my schedule now that I know about it. Thank you, Joe.
Can you see that Jamie has her hand up too? I don't know how much you can see on the screen.
I can see that now. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie, so that we can get to Jamie K's raised hand.
Thank you. I just wanted to let folks know that the earlier question about the age restrictions or limitations around the point in time count volunteers, I got an answer in the middle of or during this meeting. And the recommendation is that 16 years or older should participate, but folks won't be checking IDs. So use your discretion for who you're identifying as your partner. That's my best recommendation.
Thank you, Jamie. So not seeing any more hands raised or any other announcements in the chat.
Lauren has his hand up.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, go ahead, Lauren. The floor is yours.
I copied that chat, but I'm missing a date. Looks like, is that tomorrow? For that Office of Consumer Empowerment?
Yes, it's tomorrow. It's tomorrow from 10:30 to 12.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I think that's it. So
next slide, one more thing.
Oh, one more thing from
no, it's fine. Keep going to the next slide. Just a reminder, if you feel like you're losing your marbles because of your calendar, it's real. There are a lot of meetings coming up. We just flagging all the different things happening. We are trying to send out, like I sent out a sort of an email that tried to condense all the things that were open for the public. We are also now trying to do our meeting notifications with a registration link so that you can select to have it added to your own calendar instead of doing direct calendar invites for some of these. So all of the public ones should have a registration link where you sign up, and then you have an option to put the information into your calendar so you don't have to then manually do it. I also put in the chat, and I will add again, you can sign up to get notifications about different meetings. So we're not going to send everybody every piece of information about everything, because as you could see, you'd never get through your emails. So we added a new section for equity, so that when we get those meetings off the ground, but also any of these other meetings that you want, you can specifically request to hear just about those meetings. So even if you've already signed up on our mailing list, if you go in, you can change you basically do your name and your email, and then you'll be able to change your preferences for what you want to get. We are also working on the COC training. It might be a slightly different time on the 28th, so stay tuned. But y'all are doing amazing, amazing work. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of people working really hard. Just wanted to say really appreciate it. And we know that your calendars probably are hideously ugly right now, in no small part due to all of this. So appreciate it. Are there any other, I don't think I have anything else for upcoming meetings. Hopefully not. Oh, no problem.
And to echo Deanne in the chat, we all very much appreciate the work you do.
It's not just me, like everybody's doing great work, and I love this work, and I love the people that we work for. All, I love you, man. You guys are great.
Thank you.
On that note,
and yeah, on that note, I think we're if there's no more hands raised or questions in the comments, comments in the comment section. I want to thank everyone for joining us today.
Props to Juno. Woo woo!
Great job today, Juno.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Very exciting.
If anyone else has any questions, feel free to email me, the chair, or the staff at H3. And our next meeting when is our next meeting, actually, Jamie?
Oh, that's such a good question. So the next council meeting is Thursday, March 3rd. So a month from today. But in between that, there's 42 million to choose from. But our next council meeting will be about basically in a month, on the 3rd. So if we don't see you before then, we'll see you on March.
March 3rd is our next meeting then. And that brings our meeting to a close, I believe. We can pin it.
You have 4 extra minutes of your life. Go outside, get away from your computer, take a break. Go be human.
That's what I'm gonna do. I need
Do it.
some sunshine.
Excellent. Have a good one, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.